said, if you don't give us the permission for the beacon on Jubilee, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So I said, the choice is yours. I said, if we don't do the beacon, we should be very heavily criticised.
Yeah.
I said, and frankly, if we don't get your permission,
Good.
you don't give me the required documents for me to complete, be assured it will go ahead.
Yeah. No.
And he hasn't come back to me still yet.
Well, on that subject, I did see somewhere from East Brent that they want to put a beacon up there as well. Is that what is happening? Well, that's another subject, but what is happening?
It was in East Brent. Well,
Hang on,
We could get...
hang on. Bob, can you confirm or deny that from an East Brent point of view?
When it was discussed at the East Brent Parish Council meeting, they did point out what Brian's just said, which is technically the top of the knoll is in East Brent, it's not in Brent Knoll.
Yeah.
I've made it plain to them that historically, we've been the ones who organised it, and they've come along if they wanted to, so I don't think they're angling necessarily to have a rival beacon up there. But I think that's where you put in that Carla is the contact for East Brent, and we just need to make sure that we send her the information as to what we're doing, so they can arrange what they're doing around it.
Okay.
And therefore, that needs to be made clear to Steve Russell, who appears to be leading the celebration.
That's on the agenda, John.
Yes, I know, we're talking about it.
But if, can we just go back on the brazier? If we are going to do it, should we not therefore decide, i.e. when it's going to be done, who's going to do it, where it's going to be placed? We should, so we know what we are doing.
Yeah.
Okay. So
as we do that...
Hang on, John. John, please, just hang on a minute. Can we just try and sort this
That's what I'm
thing?
talking about.
Yeah, just date, the precise date for it.
It's the Thursday.
This is June the
2nd?
Second of June.
2nd of June. David, would you put it up there?
Yeah.
Okay. Where is the brazier? Peter's.
Oh, we've been talking to Peter, I think, haven't we?
I have, yes.
Okay.
Peter's reply was interesting.
And what about the fuel to go in the brazier?
It's normally a bale.
Bale of hay.
I'll
So-
get that.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're not having a huge bonfire like they did in 1887.
They won't let us.
No,
They
that's
do get a bit
Okay,
of
so,
information about the grass.
So we will, David and Peter,
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we'll coordinate ready on that day. Okay.
And if I can get permission before then, we will. If we don't, we will anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just write and say this will.
Colin, all I was going to add is that what you're saying is that we will be taking on that as a parish council, nothing to do with the so-called coordinator.
Yes.
Nothing to do with him.
No, we.
Right, so you'll just be told that
This is what we're doing.
That's all right, that's fine, that's no way.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Brilliant. Thanks, John. Thanks, David. Where are we on? Are we moving
Still
on from
footpath. We're
footpaths?
still footpaths at the moment, unless anybody's got anything else.
What did we decide about the Lizard business? Anything or not?
Where specifically are you
Well,
pointing it
it's
to?
everywhere really, but I mean, I particularly noticed it on the way up from Brent Knoll up towards Barrow. It's awful along there.
And one thing we could do is that, obviously everyone's going to put something in the BKN as a reminder. A number of the other parishes, when they get to sort of springtime, often have a litter pick event, which if you coordinate that with Sedgemoor, as long as you tell them where you're going to dump all the stuff that you've collected, they'll then come along and collect it afterwards, and they can also do some supply of bags and pickers if people want them. So if you spoke to Clean Surroundings, they could arrange supply and kit for us to use if we went down that route.
Should that be part of the BKN article? Perhaps asking people if they want to participate.
No, bad idea.
You know, sort of give a half day or whatever.
Well, it's rather like doing up the churchyard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've never done anything like that before.
No,
have
but
we?
it's...
No, it has
Worth
been
the
talked
chance.
about before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it might be worth talking to Clean Surroundings just to ask them if there's often let's not keep written tidy, but there's often a time of the year where everyone is sort of
Yeah,
doing the
that's
same
right,
sort of
yeah.
thing, and we might be able to coordinate with that, but they would know when that is.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Highways.
The only thing that concerns me is the new speed limit on the A38. Normally when that is done, highways put up a sign advising people that there has been a change of speed limit, but I haven't seen any on any of the stretch.
Are there any new signs there, Bob?
There are 41-hour repeater signs that have gone in, and they put new signs at either end, but they didn't specifically put up a sign saying sort of new speed limit, but they have implemented that and it has been notified. Although one problem at the moment is some of the devices like TomToms haven't been updated. They have been notified, but still some of them are showing that as a 60, but that should come through in due course.
Yeah. Okay.
So, did I pick up somewhere that when they first put them up, there was a period of grace before it was enforced? The signs went up.
Yeah, basically until all the signs went up, it wasn't enforceable. Once all the signs went up, then it was okay. But the ones at the start, they had to put them in early because they were the ones that had the lights and stuff on them, so they had to go up. So technically, there was a week or so where not all the signs were in place, so they couldn't enforce the 40. They are all now in place, so it's enforceable.
Okay. I was wondering, this may not be right, but I was wondering whether to place our Evolis units just for a fortnight maybe, either side, of the one going there and one coming there. I've got some spare brackets, we could put them on the poles. I'm sure, as they're not going to be there permanently, we could just ask Stuart to put them there for a brief period of time. That would advise people.
Yeah. I mean, certainly there's no reason why they can't go on there, because if you go that little bit further on, Burnham Without have got exactly one of those on near the Speedway.
Yeah.
The only thing is he would need to change the setting in there so it's 40 rather than...
Yeah, it's just a dial. Yeah. Okay, we'll do that, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Okay. David?
The other highway thing, I was thinking of it today, because I saw it. Down by the old manor, nothing's ever happened with the drains, and now the verge is on the old manor side, it's disappearing into quite a big rut. And obviously when they did the houses, we were told things were going to happen and nothing has, but fair enough, it was highways that said they'd ultimately deal with it, not the developer, but nothing's happened, and I wondered if something could before we get a flood or we get the road disappeared.
So that's really right outside the old...
Yeah, it's literally the old manor's verge, but it's getting worse by the week.
Hopefully we might have some good news on that front, in the sense that I've had a notice come through saying that there is some county highway works that is going to result in closing that section of road in about March.
There's a road closure down there from
There's the water board doing, so water board doing some, but it's on that corner, and I think it might be the drain.
Oh, right.
But I'm waiting for that to be confirmed. I did drop them a note to see.
So there's a sort of question mark.
Could they make my day and tell me it was actually the drain that was being done?
No, that's good. Okay. Village Green report.
Cynthia was on the special, but I haven't seen a report from her, so
Okay.
I honestly can't update you at all.
All right.
Malcolm's carrying the report next month.
Okay.
And he's got the paperwork involved.
Right. Play area, GB Sports.
GB Sports, we haven't seen a report from GB actually, not prior to this meeting. They generally send them around about the 7th or the 8th of the month, I've noticed. It's generally the week after our meeting, which is not very clever really. I will try and get them to move it a bit forward if we can. But I don't think it'll tell us anything more than we knew in the December report, probably. But, you never know. I mean, what Colin tends to do is he tends to, if he's got an issue, he tends to ring me, saying he's got a specific issue with X, Y, Z, rather than just rely on the reading the report. And he hasn't done so I'm assuming that everything's okay on that front.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing to report. Clerk's report.
The only thing I've got is a couple of things. We had visits in the surgery yesterday. We had a visit from the two gentlemen from Burton Row. Andy was there as well, and we had Kim. The concern seems to be on the SID. They're just wondering whether, they're very pleased to see the data appearing, but they're just wondering where the data is actually going. You know, what is it being used anywhere by the police or by anybody, or is it just for our own village consumption? That's really what I think they were saying.
Well, I think what they were saying is they are following the rules that they have been given to monitor, and they were very detailed in exactly what they're doing and what they're not doing. They're sending the data into an individual, which they've been told to send the data in. They've tried contacting the individual, and the individual, who's an official, has not responded in the slightest. So they're actually asking the question, why are we bothering, and is anybody going to help us? So I do think...
This is the Pink Cottage setup, is it?
It is.
Well, we've got data coming from them. We've got our Evolis data, which is going on the website for both Brent Street and Burton Row. And yeah, the problem is that data is not being analysed by anyone. Really, it just goes upon the website, and probably people looked at it, and I agree with you, Andy, it needs some form of monitoring, in other words, to highlight any issues so that it can then go to the police. But the Pink Cottage people seem to be working totally on their own anyway, and have done all along.
And certainly that was the impression I got from the meeting yesterday. Effectively, what they've been doing is, I can't give the name, but I can give it to the clerk of the individual. They have been told to report all their data to this individual. The data they report are registrations, car make, car colour and speed over 36 miles an hour. And yes, letters have gone out, but there is no track. And they actually gave an example where a car constantly speeds past them and gesticulates at them, knowing that he's going to get a letter, but there's nothing going to happen. So what they're actually saying is, well, if we're sending this data in, and we are sending it to an official, what's going on? I think it raises a larger question for us on speeding, because they then talked about speeding down here, and they also talked about HGV lorries recently. They recorded 200 lorries in one day of 30 tonnes plus on the road, on a B road. And again, they're reporting that to the individual, and there is no response. We have the police commissioner joining us, I believe, in one of our meetings.
Yes, Mark Shelford. Yeah.
So I would suggest to the council that we, the parish council, need to, I think it's quite an important issue, speeding. If we get somebody hurt in the village, we're all going to be sitting here feeling really bad about it, hopefully. So I sort of listened to them all the way through, and I think they are an independent class. They've got independent issue in that it's directly affecting their lives. But actually, it is a village issue, because we do know we're getting from the data on here, cars in excess of 40 miles an hour coming down Brent Street, Station Road and other roads. So my suggestion is that maybe, Colin, I've got to be careful about putting a hand up, we do combine all of those reports and maybe do a presentation on the day that Mark is here, and Sheffield is here, and see what response we get. Because if they are putting it in through the system, and the system is ignoring them, then I do think it's a role for the parish to step in.
Yeah, I also think that, I absolutely agree with you. I think that the other thing is, we've got all this wonderful Evolis reporting, which we pay someone to do for us, and we do nothing with the data. Absolutely nothing.
Well, this individual maybe...
Nobody wants to do anything with it, you know.
Well, I'm...
No, Andy, I'm not...
No, I say I'm of the view that we've got this data. We could put a sizable report together and at least in the mornings or get, because there's two issues, there's the heavy trucks coming down B Road, and the second one is the speeding. With that data, we should be able to put one of our 3 Somerset police mobile vehicles there at a time and create a disturbance to speeding cars, was my view, and maybe target them rather than go and say, do something with this lot, actually target them on a specific issue for us.
Yeah, I think obviously, there's, as you said, there's 2 different systems that are working at the moment. There's the parish council, they've all speed indicator devices. We've then got the 2 speed watch groups, the one in Ham Road and the one on Burton Row. Now, I mean, they report directly to the police, and that's where the official then sits in the police. Now, what should be happening, as you say, is with the data they have, is it's reported, the letters go out, and based on if they end up with multiple reports of the same vehicle, the system is supposed to be exactly what you've suggested, which is the mobile units come out, because they then get an idea as to when the time is and when they can target, in effect, somebody.
Yeah.
And they will go and knock on doors as well to draw things to their attention. So if they're reporting that they're getting abuse, that normally has been followed up by the police. Now, if they're not doing that at the moment, then we do need to give that a bit of a kick. I think it would make sense if we sent our Evolis data to the same area
precisely the time,
because we can give them the information as well. The only thing I would say is, having looked at the Evolis data, it doesn't necessarily strengthen our case in terms of having a speeding problem, because what they will do is they work off what is this sort of 85th percentile. So they basically say the top 15% are never going to take any notice of the speed limit anyway, so you knock those off and then you look at the rest of it. And although we are getting the 40s happening, the average is sort of around the sort of speed limit. So it's not giving us the killer fact that we can go to the police and say there is a real problem here. But if they're getting the ones that they can report, we ought to be chasing up the fact that if the police aren't responding, they should be. And that certainly Mr. Shelford should be taking up, and he has, I know from other villages, they have done that where it's been taken up. So
I think from what I got is Bob, that if they are doing something about it, the police force, what they're not doing is telling the people that they're doing it. So they were very despondent, I think it was fair to say, yesterday. And I think that's a shame, because they're doing it in their own time, off their own back.
And the worrying thing is this is starting to follow the trajectory of the Brent Street Speed Watch group. Because if you remember, we had a very active Brent Street group, including people on Brent Street and up at other addresses. I won't name who was doing it, but they were very enthusiastic, they were very active, and then it sort of over time they just felt they weren't getting anywhere, and their helpers dropped off, and it ended up with 2 people, and in the end they gave up as well. So I think if we can chase the police to say, look, you need to be giving some feedback here, this is important, otherwise you're going to lose the momentum. And let's face it, those 2 groups have got themselves going and have been doing a really good job. In terms of the heavy goods vehicles, it's a bit difficult at the moment, because obviously you've got Barrow Road shut. So there is an awful lot of vehicles being rerouted specifically along Burton Road, because it is the B route. And they shouldn't be going through Ash Trees and the Golf Links Road. They are being sent deliberately round Burton Road. So there will be a lot of HGVs going through there now, but hopefully once that road is opened back up again, we should see that drop. And I know it's Aileen Fletcher.
Aileen Fletcher, who I sent the original data to,
Yeah.
that our friend from Burton Road gave to me. But the thing about Aileen, of course, is that she's a very busy person, and she probably doesn't regard weight limits on Burton Road as one of her high priorities, I suspect. I don't know.
But I think, we've been given 2 names of officials that our people are reporting to. I think we do need to engage with those 2 officials and at least get that engagement 2-way. We don't know that the police aren't doing something with the data. I think the fact we're discussing it says there's a gap. And I think we just need to close that gap. Because I think what they're doing is a good thing. It's safety for the village.
I'll have a look at our own SID data as well, our own Evolis data.
Well, I'll give you a hand on the spreadsheets and that.
Thank you.
The other thing with location of SID units, they raised that as well, particularly in Burton Road.
Yeah, they effectively, I think the conclusion came down is we're 3 villages, and each of the 3 villages believe they have their own issues. Station Road, Brent Street, and Yeah. So what they did come back with is that because they spend a lot of time watching this and they know the 60-metre placing, which apparently I've keyed into the Volvo, so I now know if they're within 60 metres, you're in trouble. So they've got a 60-metre distance, and they think they know a better place to put the speeding, the Ebola system for a period, which will be highly visible and highly effective. So there was a suggestion from them that they show us where that is, and we work with them on that. I did highlight to them our major concern is that the Ebola system is exposed to wing mirrors of lorries, so we want it set back from the road, and they took that on board. But I do think to show support to these two individuals and the team, we should listen and engage.
Yeah, I mean, also we've got the refurbished SG one, which I thought I would get out of store when the weather is better and see if that will function, because it's clearly not going to function as a recording device, but it will function as a deterrent device, and we could try it in that place. It's worth a try.
Yeah.
It's supposed to have been redone. It's in store. We could just try it and see how it goes.
Well, it would be nice to go back to them, because I think they're going to be at the next.
And the next.
And the next. I think they're going to be constant on our back for it, and I think that's right.
It's good that it's turning up. That's the important thing.
So it would be nice to actually go back and say, well, we've done these 2-3 things, and we seem to be helping them.
I'd like to know where they think it would be best,
Yeah, well,
because
I
don't see any
they
signs.
explained it to me, and obviously I didn't understand. So, but I think just going up there with the unit and saying, right, let's give this a go, would give them a massive ego boost.
What's the name of the person? I'll ring him up and just go and
It
meet
was
them.
Bill that was the most vociferous, supported by Graham, wasn't it?
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham.
Billy Graham. Bill Biggs. And Graham Cole.
Oh, Graham Cole's the one that lives at
Cottage.
Pink House.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the Pink Cottage, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, Graham Cole. Yeah.
Bill's the one that first raised these
Yeah.
weight restrictions.
Yeah, I'll go and see them and find out where the place is, and then if it's okay, I'll put some brackets up and we'll try it.
Well, including
Yeah.
me on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's all on as far as classes, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. Have we got any police data? Have we?
No, I believe that Sam Piers is off at the moment, so we're not really getting much help
Okay.
from Sam. Not really, we've got loads of stuff from him,
Bob.
Yeah, a couple of things. Just report the normal sort of COVID update numbers. I don't know if you've noticed, but in Sedgemoor are incredibly high at the moment. We're well over 1,000. We're the highest in Somerset, and Somerset itself, as an average, is now just under 1,000. So it is out and about. There's a lot of infection. On the positive side, the vaccine rollout is still going well. We're now told at the end of January it's 96% of over 18s have had one, nearly 94% have had two, and it's 2/3 have now had their boosters as well. So that's going well, and they've been rolling it out to kids for 15 to 18 as well. So in terms of the sort of death rate, the average, the 5-year rate, we're actually slightly below the 5-year running average. So although there's a lot of infection out there, there is no peak in terms of COVID deaths, and the R number is now, it looks like it's below 1, so it looks like it's coming down.
What about hospitalisations?
They are not that high as well, they've been coming down. So there is, so it looks like it's a lot of it, but it's not as virulent, and because people have got the vaccinations that help them with their immunity, it does seem to be helping. In terms of local government reorganisation, the government has now laid the documents in Parliament for the elections to go ahead in May, so it is all going to be happening. So that will be the 5th of May. I think Owen has got some information that's been sent through about elections from Sedgemoor, about what people need to do to stand. County Council budget will be going to full council later this month when the full precept will be done, but basically the budget is going to be an increase of 1.99% on the basic plus a 1% for social care. It means this year actually there's also been some increased government finance to help with social care, so the actual adult social care budget is going to be £18 million, it's an increase of 13%, an increase of 18 million. There's an increase of 13% for the children's services as well, which we've had some help with funding, and overall there will be an increase of about 4% on the general investments that are being made by county in terms of their services. There's £48 million planned for the budget this year of capital spending, of which nearly half is highway works, both in terms of capital schemes and things like the pothole repairs. And I won't take Brian's thunder for later to do with buses, but county have applied for what's called a bus improvement scheme, which the government has been offering a lot of money across the country. For the improvement of the Somerset buses, we've bid for £160 odd million to majorly upgrade the bus network across Somerset. Ours is one of the poorest in the region.
Second lowest
Yeah.
in the country.
Yeah. So we are starting from a low base, and there is a definite push to try and say we're a rural area, you need to get the buses back into the rural areas to get people into the towns, because it's all very well encouraging people to do the right thing and not use their cars, but if they haven't got an alternative, what do you do? So that is moving forward. The proposed council tax, as I say, is up by 3% in total. Sedgemoor's proposal is, I believe, and again, it's not been to full council yet, but it should be about £5 on a Band D. What the percentage is, I'm not 100% certain, but it's that sort of ballpark for the annual cost. And the last thing I was going to mention, in terms of sort of climate change, we've just had, as you know, we drew up a climate change plan for the county, which was in effect the 4 districts and the county council working together with how we're going to try and become carbon neutral by 2030. There's been an assessment done, which was published, I think it was last week in The Guardian, where we've ended up being assessed as one of the best in the country in terms of the plans. We just got now to deliver on it. And that will be aiming to not just deal with the council's carbon emissions, it is working with industry and working with individuals to make sure that we address it as a whole, and we'll see how that moves forward.
Yeah, I noticed that the waste is changing as well.
Yep.
And what, hang on John,
That's okay.
What impact, if at all, is, or one, how is the power station going, because you must be having reported at Sedgemoor, and also what is the impact on the Bridgewater area in particular, or are there any significant things coming out of it?
So in terms of the amount of waste that's currently being collected is we've seen an increase in the recycling amounts and a reduction in the rubbish amount. The hope is that with the change that's now coming imminently, where we switch over to the 3 weekly collection for rubbish, that will be an incentive in effect for people to recycle more. What we've found is we're the last of the 4 districts to get it. It's rolled out across the other districts already, and in each of the districts they've seen something like a 10 or 15% increase in the recycling amount of reduction in rubbish. Now, that is beneficial in the sense of the way that we do recycling is we're getting paid for it, and that's why it's collected at the, obviously we separate it at the roadside and it's separated that way. The reason is because it basically then means the quality of the recycler that they're collecting is better, and we get a better sum of money for it. When you get it all muddled up and it gets contaminated, then you don't get much for it and it costs. In terms of the incineration, that is saving us money in the sense that we're not now paying landfill tax, because obviously for every tonne of rubbish that's being dumped, you are being charged well over £100 per tonne. So there is a charge to having it incinerated, but it is less. So there is a saving on that basis as well. So overall, although we're collecting more, it will be costing us less to do it. So if we can keep it going that way, then hopefully it will work out. And in terms also of the food waste, a lot of that goes up to, I say Dumble area, the tip that was there, because there they've got these biodigesters, which basically you put the food waste in, it with the bacteria basically eat the waste, generate gas, which is used then to generate electricity and goes into the grid, and we get an income from that. And what's left over at the end of it is then used by the councils on things like when they're doing the planting and stuff. So it's a very rich compost. Yeah. They are looking at whether they can sell it, but the regulations in terms of what you can sell is much more complicated than just them using it themselves. So at least it's saving us having to buy compost. And certainly again on that front, it's meant that there is now no purchase of. A few years ago there was a lot of peat that used to be used for doing that. None of that is used now, because again that in itself is not good for the climate if you're digging it out of the ground.
That's interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. Sorry, John.
Do I understand that there is no landfill now? What does
So
that-
basically what should end in landfill is what is left out of what's burnt. So there will be some ash that is left.
So
The amount that
major
goes into-
landfill, just chucking everything in a pit,
Yeah, is
it's
now
not happening.
not in our patch, because we've moved to
Right.
what they describe as energy from waste as opposed to
Okay.
incineration. But
Thank you for that. The other question was, the barrage is going to cost 80 million? Who's paying for that? Where's that 80 million coming from?
So the barrier that's going up is on the Parrot, which is the flood defence. So that we're getting about, of that, probably 3/4 is coming from central government. The balance is coming from, in effect, a roof tax. So all the properties that are being built in and around Bridgewater all have a levy on them to then contribute towards paying for the barrier, on the basis that if the barrier wasn't there, you couldn't build the houses because they'd be at flood risk.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks, Bob. Any other questions, Bob?
No.
No, brilliant. Well done. Thank you. Finance. Please.
Not a great deal. We've got the four grants that we agreed last month. You remember we agreed to re-engage Somerset Air Ambulance, Mendip Community Transport and Sedgemoor Citizens Advice Bureau. All of those payments now, we need authorisation to pay them. We've agreed to make them. Paul Dixon completed some work on the village green, £158. And the GB Sports climbing frame repair has now all been completed at £1,434.
Do we expect that much money?
Yes.
As much as
Quoted.
Fully quoted.
That's very expensive.
But, you know, it's done now.
Yeah.
And hopefully it will last for some time. So I need
Wasn't £2,000 originally?
Sorry?
Yes, it wasn't £2,000 originally?
well, £1,434 does include VAT, of course.
Mm.
So you've got to deduct a couple of £100 because we can claim that back.
Yeah.
So can I have a proposal that those are paid? Yeah. Second. Brian, seconded by John. All those in favour?
Okay.
Thank you.
We also need to approve at this stage resolution to approve Richard Young as our internal auditor for the 21-22 accounts.
The proposal is then that we appoint Richard Young as our internal auditor for 21-22. All those in favour?
Happy with
Yeah.
Thank
The
you.
other thing I just need to point out, while we're talking about auditors, I'm told I have to disclose to you that I've been asked to be the auditor of North Curry Parish Council's accounts at the end of the year, and I need to disclose that to the council that I'm actually actively checking their accounts.
Do we get a transfer fee?
Just so that, you know, if you have any objections to that, you're in your rights to object.
You're a valued customer, valued person.
So that's it, basically on finance, nothing else.
On updated matters, thanks Owen, sorry. Updated matters, can we, that one continue, comes in,
Contained.
20 mile an hour, continue
Ongoing.
comes in. Right, do we want to give an update on the community shop?
Yeah.
And I think maybe some comments.
Yeah.
Owen, do you want to, or Bob?
Bob, really, because I haven't really got anything to say actually personally. But,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think what the update was. Only that we continue to meet with them. We are due to have a further meeting to look at the architect to look at doing drawing plans for the proposed building. I think we're meeting in Friday. Yes. So that will give us then a better idea in terms of getting some quotes and estimates in terms of what the costs will be, both in terms of submitting plans, but also likely costs of build out, which will give us a bit of an idea as to where the project goes in terms of funding. But other than that, I don't know if there's any other update you want.
No, I don't think so, but are there any points anyone wants to make specifically about the community shop?
I think we're going to be fairly... Oh, sorry.
I'll repeat what I said at the last meeting. I was a bit concerned that there was no plan for appointing a part-time manager, and that really did concern me. I know it's difficult to get one, but I think you really need one.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts were that the shop committee need to look at various aspects associated with the shop, and in terms of how the shop is run, how the shop's financed, how we are going to finance this project with final budgets, so we know exactly where we are. Because bear in mind, we've talked about this now for 2 years. Prices have increased. There's no doubt about that, and all sorts of things. So the idea was, hopefully, if we can get some financial data together ready for March, then what I would propose is that the shop, the steering group or the working group give you a presentation as to exactly where we are, and hopefully looking where we are now, and hopefully looking at the costing and looking at the future of the project, and then really you make your final decision based on that, and we can't deliver that until we've got the costs. It's John, you want to specifically talk?
Well, I'm not going to go into a long rigmarole on this, but I do think, and I have spoken to many people, both inside and outside the council, and that there are quite a lot of grey areas surrounding the whole project as to whether it is viable, and also whether it's necessary, and how the shop committee can carry it forward. I would say in perpetuity, but we don't know how long it could go on for. But we are where we are, and we have the porter cabin with some enthusiastic volunteers, and it seems to be running extremely well. And that is to be encouraged. I think it's very good, but it does fulfil a need. And therefore I think we've got to be careful about committing ourselves perhaps to 25 years of mortgage. That's quite a lot of money, and we don't know what the cost of it's going to be, because it looks as though we might get 8 grand in, but on the other hand we have to consider ourselves as a council as to are we going to have to top up the amount by whatever amount that might be. And there are a lot of other things which we have talked around and about actually for years on council, which is going to involve capital expenditure. So we don't want to talk about it now, but we've talked about the play area and how much we're going to have to spend on that. How long is a piece of string? It could be quite long, actually, because you're not going to buy much for a couple of £1,000. You won't get anything. I mean, you've got to be looking at something between 20 and 40, 50,000 pounds, maybe, depending on what you want. But you have to make a decision on what you want. What other major expenses are there, which we're going to have to look at as council? And it's got to be put into an order of priority. I mean, I don't think that the shop is necessarily the prime prime project. It's very important, but it works very well at the moment. We could argue, and people have argued about the positioning of the porter cabin. It was suggested, and I think you know more about it, because I don't know what the ifs and buts of it was, but it could have been behind the parish hall on the slab there. I understand there were some reasons why it couldn't be, but I would like to know more about that. But on the other hand, one could consider where the porter cabin can go, but it works very well. It provides a perfectly satisfactory service. So if that is the case, then I believe we should stop and think. For a while, I personally would give the shop another year or so to prove the fact that it's a very viable proposition. I know we have had some sort of approval for a loan, but I don't think we should commit ourselves yet to a mortgage which is going to tie this village into the next 25 years without airing the subject. And I think we all should talk about it, knowing what the grey areas are, because there are quite a lot of grey areas on the subject. I think that's enough.
No, I appreciate those wise words, John. I think I've got a way of approaching this, but how can I put it? The whole project is it's a bigger picture project. It's where do you want to see Brent Knoll and its facilities and its structure in years to come, and maybe this is an opportunity to put if you like, a stamp down as to this is something that the parish council have done to take the village forward. But I do take your points. I think where the shop is positioned at the moment is it's not in the ideal position, but as the position of a shop, it has many things going for it, particularly when the weather brightens up and more people come into the village and it becomes more known, if you like. And I just, you know, we need to look at that toilet block long term. You know, it's not going to survive long term. We've already got major plumbing problems with it. But this is an opportunity to do something to incorporate into some form of village centre. That's the way I'm viewing it. But I think if we're going to, how can I put it, we had the opportunity 6-12 months ago to hit this thing on the head and have no involvement, but we've slowly become more involved. And I just think we need to look at the bigger picture and what is best for the community. And, you know, they are volunteers and we should be supporting volunteers. They're well-intentioned volunteers. They're not a highly structured business. They are doing their best for the community. And that's the way we need to view it. As long as they control their finances, that's, if you like, their problem, which we will obviously monitor. But I think the points you make are very valid points, and I think that the whole council, hopefully in March, we can get together.
Well, I would ask that we put aside time from the council, and we've raised the various issues. You've got to stop and think. I mean, I have talked to one person. We know who it is, but
Yeah.
you know, it's shop or nothing, and that's it. We've got to have the shop, and if you just think, wait a minute, there are a number of it. No, I think we should have the shop. Well, that is fine. Just because something is a brilliant idea and is an asset, it doesn't mean that it is a viable proposition. And I would say, just a bit slowly, and we need, and this is going to be about the final chance we have as a council of saying, right, I know where we're going, this is what we will do. It would be a very good idea if we get some very firm facts about how much we're going to spend. And I don't want to go on about it because I have talked about
Yeah,
people about it.
John, we couldn't possibly, just reflect on what you've said, we cannot possibly, as a council, move on this project until we know exactly
Precisely.
how it's going to be
I agree with
funded.
you.
That is the crux.
But,
And
we also have to take into consideration any other major expenditure which we may or may not think about. That has to be included in the overall picture. I
Well,
think
we have addressed that slightly in our budget, haven't we? I.e. expenditure on the village green. I agree with you. We have addressed it. There is a sum of money within our budget each year which we can build up each year towards
also,
the
it is,
project.
sorry to butt in, but it's fair to say that if you're going to do some major business on the village green, it's exactly the same way if there's some major roof on the church, you're not actually going to be spending more money. What you've got to do is you've got to write proper letters and get the grants in, because you're going to be spending grants money, but probably 25% of whatever the cost is going to come from whoever is making the application. So that's it, we've got to have that money aside, fine.
Yeah.
But if we make the decision we should go forward, I think that's quite enough to settle the subject.
No, I think what you've said is very profound and very wise, but hopefully we will give you the entire picture, and then you as councillors can make up your mind based on the information we give you. And the financing of this project is the key to it. No, there's no doubt about that.
No, I'm not against it, but I'm cautious. There we go.
Yeah, no.
Just a lot of this was teased out at the last meeting, wasn't it? And this is what I said. What you said ties in with what I said about I was concerned that they weren't going to appoint a temporary manager, which I think
But that's all part and parcel of
would be important.
Brian, I don't believe that that is our concern as a parish
No, I
council.
know that. But
That
it
is their problem.
Yeah.
The way they manage it is their problem.
But it's the result that we're interested in.
But it's therefore, it's part of, the commercial proposition. Is the thing going to be commercially viable, and taking into concern that, and taking into consideration the temporary managers, how long are they going to manage, how long do they want to be involved, this, that and the other, the various little bits and pieces.
At the risk of repeating myself, one, we will give you the financing of the project. Two, the way the shop is run is not our concern. We can make sure as we go forward that we're abreast with regular meetings with them, but if they choose not to appoint a manager in the time being, that is their problem. They may well be in a position where they will have to find some money themselves to put into this capital project, which will not allow them to appoint a manager because they will need the cash. So, again, until we can give you the whole picture, I just feel you should allow us to give you that picture, please. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that something, Andy, you happy with what we
Yeah, I
said?
think the points raised are correct, and we need to address them.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The only thing I would say is that the committee, the working group, have been extremely forthright with the shop committee. And speaking as somebody who don't get a vote on this matter, I think we've done everything we can with due diligence to make sure that we get the information that we need in order to ultimately be able to come and put it in front of the council. I don't think we could have done any more than we had done, actually.
No, to be credited.
So I think, you know, Andy, Bob and Colin, I think have done a tremendous job in getting to where we are now, actually. And so we just look forward to the next stage.
Okay. Sorry to burden it, but that's where we are. That's where we are. Brian.
Right. I've just written a little report which I'll read. It'll be quicker, actually, but some of it's already been discussed. The drive for this Bus Back Better scheme has been prompted by the poor provision in Somerset, and the original aim was to get the scheme to return to at least pre-pandemic times and hence build on that. Personally, we've used it several times to Burnham back into Cheddar, on each occasion a splendid, peaceful and enjoyable ride without the worry of driving, and I would ask fellow councillors also to use the facility if they can. The part the parish council could play is to improve the look of our bus stops, to provide clear, weatherproof and accurate timetables, to show in a small way that we support the idea. We could probably better get a bespoke piece done by a local carpenter, excuse me. Generally, we're an increasingly older community which would benefit considerably from improved bus services, especially for those people who are unable to drive for various reasons. It can also be a social occasion which many people value. I'm very pleased to say that the Brent Street residents are the most frequent users of the service that goes through here in all of its journey to Cheddar. It is suggested that individuals, or we as a parish council, write to our local MP for support in the bus recovery grant beyond the 31st of March this year. Otherwise, massive cuts could be disastrous. Total value requested by the whole country was £7 billion. The original £3 billion in the autumn budget was cut to £1.2 billion and will terminate in March, so that's not good news. And we could use local knowledge in our campaign to improve the level of bus services. I have a copy of a letter from the Somerset Bus Partnership to the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of Transport, Baroness Vere, which may be used as an exemplar. And I would suggest that perhaps myself and the clerk can get together and perhaps put a letter together to send to the MP, unless you want to do one individually. But that's it. Okay? But it's not good news at the moment.
Right. I think our bus stops, you've made reference to, timetables. Do we have, is that available at all to people?
Yes, we've made, there are timetables up in the notice board, but also there are printed off ones that are available through the shop at the moment.
Yeah.
In terms of putting them on the bus stops, I'll have a word with county and see if we can get some boards put on by them. If not, they might, because technically, as you say, the bus stops do come under the parish council remit, which is interesting. But I will see if county will do it themselves. I'll ask. But if not, I'll find out if there's anything that we can do to encourage them, because they must have these things made up as a standard thing anyway. So
if not, I think the local person, like Paul Dixon for instance, could make them as well. They're weatherproof. The other thing about notices, bus timetables, is that a resident asked for them to be lowered because she couldn't read them. They were too far away. They need to be lowered, especially the one by the shop.
right.
But also she asked for them to be put in the copies should be put in the shop, but presume they are already.
They are, yes.
That's fine.
Are
Thank
they
you.
using the existing bus stop notices that we've got at the moment?
Yes.
And are they clearly visible and are
No,
they
they're not
clean
very
and
good.
tidy?
They're not very good.
No.
So,
We want to make it look a bit more professional,
yes,
as if we mean business.
do they need cleaning then? Or do they need
Straight
replacing? What, the posts or the...
Posts, the metal posts are a bit wonky.
Right.
Yeah, they came through when there were ones that had been damaged or where the flags had dropped off. They have put new flags on, but the others they left as they were. So it's so that all the bus stops are still in place because it will. Although the timetable only tells you certain places, it will stop at any of those bus stops throughout the village.
And they've dropped me off at home, for instance. No trouble at all. It's great for an old man.
Okay, so...
I'll happily chase. I'll start
Thank you.
chasing up the timetable bits.
So, would you be happy
And
if?
what
If we
about
got
doing
together?
some
Yeah.
form of survey on our bus stop signs then, and how clear they are, or whether foliage is covering them? They need to be made more visible.
I'm walking around a fair bit doing some other stuff at the moment.
Can you
So
have a look?
I'll have a look at those at the same time.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Bob.
John?
Yeah, Bob, I wonder if this came up when it was under discussion at county, wasn't it? Yeah. And they got the bus service back, and this is, of course, fine, but it's mainly for people who want to do some shopping and go out. Now, it doesn't affect me, but if asked, I wouldn't want to do my shopping in Cheddar. What people really need to know to be able to go to a decent centre, either Weston-super-Mare or Bridgewater, that is where people would go to do some shopping. Because that
There are
actually-
buses to Bridgewater from Vernon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're talking about people not being able to get on a bus because they want it going through Brent Street. Well, if their only alternative now is to go to Cheddar. Well, I don't know who wants to go to Cheddar.
You can get a connection at Vernon.
Yeah, well, that's pissing about, but sort of changing here and there. You don't want to spend the whole day changing buses, and you want something to go through the village to be able to pick people up, so that people who can't get about so easily can go and do some decent shopping.
Well, if we get more finance,
But I do accept your
more
point
routes,
there.
presumably, being done. And there'll be one to
Sorry,
Western.
John.
I mean, certainly what Brian said is right. Is if the bid is successful, then we'll be looking to increase the routes. And yes, I've had the same feedback, which is yes, the bus goes from Vernon to Cheddar, but I want to go to Weston,
Yeah, of course.
which is the problem was we had to start somewhere.
Yeah, I
And
agree with you.
what
No, I
they're
just-
doing at the moment is they are monitoring all of the bus people, the people who are going on the bus. They're keeping the records as how many people are using it. If it is well used and it shows that there is a demand in the rural
Bob,
areas.
You've answered
They
the
will
question, has it been discussed? Yes, it has, so thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
All right?
Yep.
So,
yeah, so we'll get a letter on
Two
it.
of us will
Yeah.
get.
Good.
Right, now I get sorted out now.
Okay, unless anybody else wants to be involved. Good enough to do
We
that.
need your technical skills, Brian.
Correspondence for next?
Nothing that you haven't already received. I'm piling most stuff through on email. Don't think there's anything that hasn't been sent.
Okay,
It's all there.
thank you. Okay, matters of decision. The land, the car park at the top of Hill Lane.
Well, we've got a meeting with Charles Fleming, our solicitor, on Monday. I think Monday, isn't it? Yeah. Bob and I will meet up, and Colin may not be able to come to that actually, but we'll meet up with Charles and just clarify some things on the title more than anything else. You know, what exactly does he think he's transferring to us, and do we agree with what he's transferring to us is correct? I think that's what we're trying to get to, really. It's all been a bit slow, actually. I understand that the transferor solicitors have been quite slow off the mark. And since we're being given this land for £1, I suppose we haven't got a lot of room to complain, really. But anyway, it is happening and it will happen. We did have some quotes